Hi, I'm Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography based here in beautiful, sunny Naples, Florida. So, you're an aspiring videographer and you're considering a stability device for your camera to give your projects much greater production value. You know, it wasn't that long ago that to get stable video shots while simultaneously being mobile within a scene required some pretty heavy-duty contraptions like the Steadicam Pilot, which offered up great results, but it had a pretty steep learning curve and frankly so-so performance, especially in tight spaces. Then came along the movie FreeFly M10, which opened the door to handheld gimbal stability devices, but it came in at a whopping $15,000. Wow. So, as with any great new innovative product, more affordably priced competition is sure to come out of the woodwork. And out of the woodwork, they have come. One device in particular that has garnered a lot of attention is the DJI Ronin, which, following on the heels of their smash success with the Phantom 2 Vision series, it was pretty easy for DJI to take advantage of that popularity and notoriety to take their gimbal technology used in the Phantom 2 and advanced Phantom 2 Vision Plus into the handheld arena for DSLRs and gain a lot of traction very quickly. Well, when they announced the Ronin earlier this year, DJI initially speculated that the product would hit the market at approximately $5,000, which, compared to the movie FreeFly M10, it looked like a relative bargain at 1/3 the price. However, when it actually hit the market, it came in at an even more relatively affordable $2,999. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not exactly cheap, but it's impressively priced when you look at the professional handheld gimbal market as a whole. But even at $3,000, does the Ronin offer up enough value to make it worth your while? Well, we're going to spend the next 10 or 15 minutes or so delving into the exciting world of videography with the DJI Ronin. Before we get started, I need to offer up a disclaimer. As you probably know if you followed my channel for a while, I usually do lens reviews for photographers. But if your business is anything like mine, in the last year, more and more of my clients have been asking, well, strike that, they've actually been demanding that I get into video. Several of them have seen the reviews on this channel and have asked me to do something similar for them in their respective businesses. The problem for a professional photographer like me, turned into an aspiring videographer, is that your clients expect your results in video to be as professional as they are in your stills. Well, when you start getting into video with a DSLR, you learn pretty quickly that getting your video to look as professional as your stills can be a lot more daunting and frankly a lot more challenging than you or your clients probably realize. So, speaking for myself, the hardest challenge for me was managing movement in my videos and getting that movement to look steady and professional. Specifically, you learn that hand-holding your camera just won't cut it most of the time, unless you're filming relatively still subjects. So what do? Well, my path started with camera sliders. And if you've used one of those, I think they're awesome. But the downside is they restrict you to only 2 or 3 feet of movement in a relatively confined space. Just the same, they add a ton of production value. They're great, but I needed to move around and I couldn't be stationary, nor could I be confined to 24 or 36 inches of space. So from there, I followed Devin Graham's lead and picked up the GlideCam HD 4000. By the way, if you haven't seen that guy's channel, check it out. Devin Graham's channel is awesome. It's under Devin's Supertramp. The guy's phenomenal. Anyway, it's a neat device. It has a little bit of a learning curve, but even when I learned how to use it, my results were definitely better, but I still wasn't getting the kind of results that were satisfying for me or satisfying enough for me or my clients. From there, I moved on to the Steadicam Pilot. It too is a great device, but it's expensive. It has a lot of moving parts, and I found it to have a really steep learning curve to get professional looking results. But the results with that device are considerably smoother and more professional. Funny thing is, I bought the Steadicam Pilot and literally found out about the Ronin like 5 days after I bought the Steadicam. And as soon as I saw this thing, from the look on the video, I had the feeling that the Ronin was probably going to be the device for me, the Ronin or something like it. So as we get into this review, keep in mind that me personally, I'm relatively new in the world of video, the last 12 to 18 months. And as I've moved into videography kicking and screaming, but now that I'm here, I'm really trying hard to embrace it and learn as much as I possibly can. Now, as for scoring the Ronin, it's going to be scored similarly to my lens reviews, but with some obvious changes. We'll score the Ronin based on build quality, ease of setup, ease of use and operation, quality of results, and value. So, without any further ado, let's get to it. All right, so let's take a walk around the Ronin and examine its build quality. It's pretty obvious that it's solidly built, which is its greatest strength, but it's also its greatest weakness, as the first thing that gets your attention is the strength of these aircraft-grade aluminum components that are built in here. And it's tough and obviously designed for professional use. The whole rig without a camera comes in at just under 10 pounds, but as soon as you add a camera rig to this thing, keep in mind that the pounds add up pretty fast. And that's basically because it's so solidly built, it's pretty easy to get up to 12 or 14 pounds or more. It's pretty important because that kind of weight can make utilizing the Ronin very tiring. In fact, I wish the device itself were made out of more lighter weight carbon fiber like these handles here. Now, you'll note that the Ronin has a 3-axis gimbal setup for smooth panning, tilting, and rolling. It's a setup that's borrowed from the aerial gimbals that are also manufactured by Zenmuse and used in DJI's Phantoms and drone series. It's such a simple idea that I'm surprised these things didn't come out years ago, as the whole thing works brilliantly. The motors are strong and do a great job of keeping the camera steady and buttery smooth. Now on the downside, in addition to the weight, there are some exposed wires here, which I can see being a problem, especially if you have curious and playful cats in your house or kids. And the design of the Ronin, that means that in order to keep these things somewhat protected and away from like the ground, you're going to need to have this stand with you at all times, as you really shouldn't be resting the Ronin on the ground. Now, speaking of protection, the Ronin also comes with a case that looks really strong, but frankly I found the case to be lacking in its build quality, as the strong looking plastic is, based on my experience, well, it's kind of brittle. For example, well, I'm glad they included it, but for example, I took it with me on a trip to New York for a shoot, and the airline broke the retractable handle. And then on the flight back, one of the screws fell out of one of the other handles in the case. So needless to say, I'm kind of questioning the case's long-term viability. But all in, you can see pretty clearly that the Ronin is in fact designed for professionals. Now I can live with the higher weight and the so-so case quality, so long as the device itself delivers the results. And so far, I have to say that it does. So for build, we're going to give the Ronin an 8.5 out of 10. All right, so next up is ease of setup. And straight out of the box, frankly, the Ronin can look a little bit intimidating, as there are 2 levels of stuff inside of the box, but the assembly is basically toolless, except for a couple of Allen keys or Allen wrenches, whatever you want to call them. I'm not going to go over the full setup here in this particular video, as there are plenty of videos out there that explain taking the Ronin out of the box and putting it together. The Ronin comes with a balancing stand, which is absolutely essential, not only for balancing, but for everyday operation. As I mentioned before, you don't want to leave it on the ground with these wires exposed. Now, speaking of balancing, the one thing that I did learn the hard way was the importance of balancing the camera. This can't be stressed enough. There's a great video out there by Aerial Media Pros that demonstrates the step-by-step how to balance your Ronin along 4, count them, 4 axes. I only balanced 2, basically because I thought that the GH4 here would be so light that the gimbal, being as strong as it was, could easily compensate for the lack of center of gravity. I was wrong, dead wrong. In fact, I spent the first 2 days convinced that my Ronin was defective, and I was ready to send it back, as when I would turn it to briefcase mode, it would kind of flip on its side and just like act like a fish out of water. And I'd have the same experience when trying to flip it into upright mode. It would flail all over the place and just keep trying to do something. It wouldn't work. So finally, I watched the Aerial Media Pros video and balanced it along all 4 axes as explained in the video, and then it was like butter. It worked beautifully. So word to the wise, learn from my experience and make sure that your camera is balanced as perfectly as possible. Otherwise, the Ronin will likely flail around like a fish out of water if it isn't balanced appropriately. Okay, so back to setup. The fact that it's toolless, getting up and running for the first time within a half an hour is probably a pretty reasonable expectation. Balancing for the first time can be a bit of a challenge, but you get used to it and it gets faster and faster with each successive setup. The fact that there's so relatively little involved with the assembly and the fact that it all fits nicely into a molded case is actually pretty remarkable. So for ease of setup, it's almost perfect, but I just wish there were more or a bit more documentation explaining the importance of balancing the camera from the jump. Seriously, I mean, who reads manuals anymore anyway? A nice placard inside the box when you first open it would be a good place to start. You know, make sure you balance, something big and bold. But anyway, so for ease of setup, that nit aside, once I figured it out, the Ronin does in fact get a 9 out of 10. So next up is ease of use and operation. So okay, we're set up, we're balanced, and we're ready to rock and roll. Now once it's set up, it's pretty remarkable how simple the Ronin is to use. The iOS app allows you to set how fast you want the gimbal to pan and tilt via Bluetooth. It's actually pretty simple. There's plenty of great videos out there on YouTube that show you and demonstrate how to use the app. You also have this remote control device that allows for a second operator to control the pan and the tilt. You can also set which has the priority, either the Ronin or the handheld remote. Now, I give DJI a lot of credit for the amount of time and effort that clearly went into the ease of use and operation, because with just a little bit of practice, your videos are going to look more and more like a Hollywood production. You'll be able to pull off some really smooth pans and tilts. You'll even be able to simulate jib and slider shots. It's also pretty amazing how well it smooths out even the most jittery of movements. For example, like running full speed down the street with the device in my hand, handheld. And for comparison's sake, I demoed a video, which you might have seen, that shows me running with an iPhone versus me running with the Ronin. Its ability to smooth out even the harshest of movements make the Ronin such a game-changing device for a variety of shots that used to take all kinds of equipment to pull off, and they're all wrapped up neatly into one simple, not so little package. Now, if I were starting all over again in video, I'd start here, because what I can pull off with the Ronin used to take a dolly, a slider, a jib, a crane, etc., and I can get very similar results with just the Ronin. There are 3 distinct modes of operation with the Ronin. There's something called underslung, which is this mode right here, which is the default position. Briefcase, which allows you to turn it on its side and fit into tight spaces. And upright mode, which allows you to position the camera above you, say it's like looking to a crowd, for example. The camera's upside down, so you need to flip the video in post, of course, but the results are just great. Now, the battery that's included seems to last forever. DJI says it has about 4 hours, and that's more or less what I've been experiencing. Now, again, on the downside, because of the weight, especially with a camera and lens of any substance, you're going to tire very quickly with the Ronin. So make sure you make it to the gym once in a while, because you're going to need to be in pretty good shape to use the Ronin on a regular basis. Now, that said, for ease of use and operation, in my opinion, DJI just hits it out of the park, as the Ronin gets a 9.5 out of 10. Now, I would have gotten a 10 if the overall rig were in fact lighter weight. So next up is where the rubber meets the road, and that is in the quality of the results. We already told you that it's built really well, it's relatively easy to set up and operate, but how does it perform? Well, it's freaking awesome. I could ceaselessly gush and go on and on about how great and revolutionary a device like this is for video production. But truthfully, I'm not going to waste your time. Instead, as with all of my reviews, the next 2 or 3 minutes is going to be a series of videos showcasing the amazing things you can pull off with the DJI Ronin. And this thing is nothing short of a game changer. So last up is value. And truthfully, this is such a rapidly changing space that what may be a good value today might only be a so-so value tomorrow. So we're going to look at value as it stands today, today being September of 2014. And at $2,999, the Ronin is not cheap. In fact, it's downright expensive. However, there's a couple of things you have to consider if you're thinking about obtaining one of these. For starters, because of its versatility, there's a case to be made that there's a bunch of equipment that you may no longer need as a result of obtaining a Ronin. For example, I've been able to get away with perfectly acceptable slider-like shots and jib-like shots with the Ronin that previously would have required a separate slider and jib. So you can argue that you're actually saving money by no longer having to purchase those separate items. But you also have to consider the competition, and this space is certainly not lacking in competition. In fact, Turbo Ace has been very much a direct competitor of DJI in nearly everything that they've done. They very aggressively have marketed against the competing DJI product. In fact, every time I check out a DJI-related product review on YouTube, 8 times out of 10, the opening advertisement is from Turbo Ace touting their competing product. They compete directly with the Ronin with their All-Steady series, the 5, which is for considerably less money, and the 7 for slightly more. The All-Steady 7 also weighs less and has a thumb-controlled joystick for panning and tilting right here in the handlebars, making the All-Steady 7 a true one-man production company's dream. Now on paper they look great, but in full disclosure, I haven't used those products, but they both look very competent to me. There's also a lesser-known company called Came TV, C-A-M-E-TV, that makes inexpensive gimbal devices, and lastly, there's Flashpoint, who just announced a 2-axis gimbal for under $1,000. Now, there's little doubt that the Ronin is built for pros, and if you need robust build quality, then the Ronin is definitely up to the challenge and probably for you. But some of the competition out there is so much less expensive that you have to consider them as well. But to sum it up, the Ronin is very well built with a very intuitive iOS app, and DJI clearly has professionals in their sights. But if you don't need the top shelf build, then one of the lesser priced competitors' devices may, in fact, be better for you. So for value, we're going to give the Ronin a very solid 8 out of 10. Okay, well, we've come to the end of another review, and it's time to wrap up this one and draw some conclusions about the amazing DJI Ronin. So here goes. The build quality. It's top shelf and clearly designed for professionals. It's made out of aircraft-grade aluminum, and it's heavy, as it tips the scale at just under 10 pounds, and that's before you add a camera rig and lens. It can handle up to 16 pounds of payload, meaning the whole rig can top out at nearly 26 pounds, and that's great until you have to run around with said 26-pound rig. It's a serious workout, but it's also a testament to the strength of the motors in the gimbal. On the downside, there's some exposed wiring back here, and personally I see this getting chafed and possibly ripped pretty easily over time, and to me that's a concern for the Ronin's long-term viability. The other nit that I have is over the included case. I'm glad DJI included it. It's made out of a thick, albeit brittle plastic, as in less than a week the retractable handle snapped and one of the screws fell out of one of the side handles. So that's certainly a concern as well. Now I can live with those things because as the Ronin itself is just amazing at delivering results. And in the end, to me, that's what really counts. So for build, we gave the Ronin an 8.5 out of 10. It would have scored a little bit higher if the whole thing were actually lighter weight. Ease of setup. It looks a little intimidating out of the box as there are 2 layers inside of the case, and the case itself is just huge. But once you get started, it's actually a lot easier than it looks. And remember, the whole setup is toolless. The most important aspect of the Ronin, as we mentioned earlier in the review, is balancing the rig. As based on my experience, if you don't balance it properly from the jump, the Ronin is not going to operate correctly. You'll literally think that it's malfunctioning as it'll flop around like a fish out of water. But over time, you do get the hang of balancing various camera rigs, and it gets easier and a lot faster. Eventually, setup will probably take you as little as 5 to 10 minutes. But again, I keep stressing this because it's so important. Balancing the rig is the most challenging part, but it's essential that you get it right. So for ease of setup, we give the Ronin a 9 out of 10. Ease of use and operation. Once you're balanced, set up, and ready to go, it's just remarkable how great your results can look right out of the gate. in no time, you're going to be able to do really smooth pans, smooth tilts, even jib shots. The only downside, again, is the weight of the whole rig. It's going to get really tiring really quickly, which is unfortunate because the Ronin is just amazing otherwise. So for ease of use and operation, we gave the Ronin a 9.5 out of 10. Quality of the results. From the moment you use a balanced Ronin for the first time, you know this is something special. Because with barely any practice at all, I was getting really smooth and professional looking shots with hardly any perceptible camera shake almost immediately. It was amazing. So it was the solution to so many problems that hand holding or glide camming presented. The smoothness of the video was so stunning and I was so excited about it. I literally felt like I had to show as many people as I could as to how great it was. And what really brought it home was comparing running down the street with my iPhone in my hand doing recording versus running with a camera attached to the Ronin. It's such a game-changing device, it just can't be overstated. It's so good that even my wife said it looked like I was riding on a scooter alongside the boy that I was running next to on his scooter, instead of running full speed with 12 pounds of camera rig in my hands. The results with the Ronin are nothing short of amazing. So for quality of the results, it's a grand slam and easily a 10 out of 10. Value. Given that there are new players springing up all over the place in this space, three-axis gimbal devices are quickly going to become commonplace. And at $2,999, the Ronin is definitely a premium device. But with so much competition coming on the market so quickly, I'm pretty sure we'll question the nearly $3,000 price tag eventually, as prices are destined to fall. Now in its favor, again, the Ronin is extremely well built. It also includes a sturdy, albeit brittle case, and a really well thought out and intuitive iOS app. It's a really good value today, but lower price competition from the likes of Turbo Ace, CameTV, and Flashpoint may be viable alternatives for your business. Now the other guys may only have a two-axis gimbal, or maybe they won't be built as well, but you may not need those things either. So for value, we gave the Ronin an 8 out of 10. Overall, it's a 45 out of 50 and just squeaks out our highly recommended rating. The final word. Now, if your business is anything like mine and you're a photographer making the transition into video or fusion photography where you mix stills and video in your presentations to your client, then this is a really great time to consider embracing video as part of your offerings. The DJI Ronin, though not cheap, for me, is a game-changing device that does an admirable job of substituting the finished look of several other devices, notably sliders and jibs. It's a great way to get into professional-looking video at a relatively low price and a really short learning curve, as in no time with the Ronin, it'll have your productions looking Hollywood chic. This is Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography, based here in beautiful, sunny Naples, Florida. If you like these reviews, please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, happy filming.